Hi everybody, so in this video we're going to be reviewing how you can simplify an expression in order to determine whether two separate expressions are equivalent or not. So the strategies we're going to use here are distributing, combining like terms, and then seeing if we can simplify. Now in problem 118, what we want to do is always start with the more complicated equation. So in this case, that would be the bottom equation here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that down in order to make sure that I have some nice big space to work. Now my job is going to be to figure out if this equation, which I'm about to simplify, is actually the same thing as the top equation, just in disguise. So once we simplify it, they end up being the same. In order to do that, my first step is going to be to distribute. Now, distributing is what we do in order to get rid of a parentheses. So when I distribute, I'm using multiplication. 4 times x would be 4x. 4 times -2 would be -8. And then because the 15 is separate term, it's not inside the parentheses, I'm just going to drop down the plus 15. Next, I'm going to combine the like terms. Now, in this case, the like terms would be the terms that do not have an x because both the -8 and the 15 do not have x's. So when I combine those, the -8 plus 15 is +7. And we're going to go ahead and just copy down the 4x and the y equals. I'm not changing anything. I'm just copying them down. Now, if you compare this final answer here to the answer we originally started with for the first equation, you can see that those actually end up being the same, even though they looked different at the beginning. So that tells us that yes, these two equations actually were equivalent. They just looked different because we hadn't simplified. Now, in problem 119, you can see that both of these equations need to be simplified. They're both pretty complicated. So I'm going to start with this first equation here, and then when I'm done with that one, I'm going to simplify the second one. So for the first equation, I'm going to go ahead and copy it down. I'm going to get 1/4 parentheses x minus 8 plus 10, copied down. Just like in the other problem, I'm going to distribute as my first step. So I'm going to have 1/4 times x, which is just 1/4 x. And then 1/4 times 8 would be -2. And I'm going to go ahead and copy down the 10. Now I'm going to try to combine like terms. So in this case, the -2 and the +10 would be like terms because they both do not have an x, so they're alike. If I combine those, -2 plus 10 would be +8. And then I'm just going to drop down, I'm not going to change anything, the 1/4 x and the y equals. Now, this is my simplified version of the first equation, but in this problem, I also wanted to simplify the second equation because this second equation is also very complicated. We need to distribute and combine like terms to make it look simpler. So the second equation, when I copy it down, would be y equals 1/4 parentheses x plus 16 minus 3. Once again, my first step here would be to distribute. And when I distribute, I get 1/4 x plus 4. And then I'm going to bring down the -3. Just going to copy that down. Now I'm going to combine like terms. And in this problem, the like terms would be the 4 and the -3. 4 minus 3 would be 1. And then I'm going to copy down the 1/4 x and the y equals. Now, if I compare these two final answers and I see how they simplified, you can see that no, these are not the same. They're not equivalent. But I couldn't be sure until I actually did the work to check, which in this case was good because I found out they were not equivalent. There are a couple more strategies we can use to simplify. Oops, looks like there's a typo. There should be a parentheses here. In this part, we're just going to be seeing if this expression at the beginning is equivalent to this expression And in order to do that, we're going to need to simplify the more complicated expression, which in this case would be the first one. So I'm going to start with the same strategy. I'm going to distribute. When I distribute the -2, I get -6x. And then -2 times -4. So don't forget that these are both negatives, is going to make +8. And then I'm just going to drop down the 15x at the beginning. Now I'm going to look for some like terms that I can combine. So 15x minus 6x is going to make 9x. And then I'm going to bring down the +8. Now, if I compare this expression to this expression, they're very similar. The difference is that the second expression has a -8. So no, these expressions would not be equivalent. Last but not least, let's talk about problem 121. Now, you'll notice that in the first expression here, we actually have a fraction. So we're going to split up this fraction into 2 parts, and then we're going to divide each part separately and simplify. So the first fraction that we're going to make is going to be the fraction 24x divided by 3. Then I'm going to bring down the minus, and the second fraction that I'm going to make is going to be the 18 divided by 3. And last but not least, I'm just going to drop down this +9 and put it at the end of my expression here. Now, when I actually simplify, so 24 divided by 3 gives you 8x minus 18 divided by 3 gives you 6. And I'm going to bring down the +9. And the -6, oops, that's the wrong color. The -6 and the +9 would be like terms, so I can combine them, which means -6 plus 9 is +3, and I can just bring down the 8x. Now, even though the original problems looked very different, you can see the original expressions were very different from each other. When you compare the final result after you simplify, these actually do end up being equivalent. So it's very important to know how to simplify so you can tell when expressions or equations are actually equivalent to each other. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for some practice.